Guess it's broadcasting.
Hello and welcome everyone to the Transform Your Relationship Show live from San Diego. It's Tuesday morning. I'm Laura Rubinstein here with the powerful and amazing Dr. Rhoberta Shaler. How are you, Rhoberta?
Oh, I'm all those things and as much as I can possibly be on a Tuesday morning. How are you?
Doing really well, thank you. I'm excited that we are here back again for our show. We have an amazing topic. Apparently amazing is my word today, just so all you know.
All you amazing people out there, you
You,
know it's going to be an
yes.
amazing day.
And it's going to be an amazing show, and you have an amazing life, and we're going to help you get it just today in whatever 30 minutes that we're here with you today. So our topic is validation, why we need it, how to get it, and let's just start with that title, why we need it. Well, I hear that, and I almost like, oh, I know I desire it, but I actually need it. I feel like it, but I feel like guilty, like it's a cultural overlay, like I shouldn't have to want to be validated or whatever.
No, I know you should just be, every one of us should be isolate, existential beings, completely devoid of the need of other humans to tell us anything. Yeah, we're not like that. You know, in science, I've been working with a really interesting conversation with my partner, Charles, and we've been talking about the very, 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 very tiny little part of our universe called gluons. And you know, gluons don't exist alone. They're always in a pair. And that's the basis of our universe. So if you're thinking that you shouldn't need other people to do anything for you at all, you should be this absolute powerful icon that can stand alone, let yourself off that hook, would you?
What is a gluon?
Oh, it's a teeny tiny thing that you can't hardly see, but it's in the basis of every last little thing on Earth. And big conversation in the science world. But just know that they don't exist alone. There has to be a pair. And that really informs us, because we do need other people because they see us from the outside. We see this way, they see that way. That's what we need validation for, is what my world feels like in here the same as it looks like from out there. And that's validation, right? When somebody says, yes, it is the same, or yes, I think you're wonderful, or yes, I love that idea, or yes, you deserve to take up space and draw breath on this earth. That's validation.
And so it's like a reality check almost. It's like what is what I hear,
Yeah,
what I see
yeah.
in what I'm feeling in, and if somebody's reflecting that back to me, okay, I know I'm in alignment with the way other people think or see me, or I don't know. I kind of like knowing how I occur in the world. And a lot of times I don't think we know how we occur in the world. It's really hard to get. I even find it hard, I say I love you to someone, and do they really know how I feel? Like when
Yeah.
and then same thing, do I really know what they mean when they say that? It's great. At least I'm hearing that, right? Or I'm
Mhm.
saying it, but how are we actually getting that experience of what the other is experiencing?
Well, that's a really good part of that, Laura. And the other part of it is when somebody says they love you, are you capable of believing it? Because if you haven't been validated by knowing what it feels like to be loved in your young life, what do you measure it against?
And if you have been loved in a certain way, even if it wasn't, that's what you're measuring it against, I think, is your young life experience. And it may have not been the most, so sweet and soft and cuddly. It might have been tough love, as people like to call it, or people were just very angry, and the only way they could express their love was not through positive words, it was through criticisms.
Hmm. Or exactly. I mean, we have whole fields of studies. On my show, the Relationship Help Show, I did a whole show on these things called ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. Well, that's a thing. And there's a lot of research on it, and it creates certain things within you, depending on what kind of adverse childhood experiences you had. And then there's another thing, which is called childhood emotional neglect, and CENs. And if that occurred to you, you haven't been validated. And so you don't feel that you could trust anybody who tries to validate you, and you have to overcome that hurdle, because those early things were all about, well, I don't even want you here. I wish I'd never gotten pregnant. Go stay somewhere else. People neglect their children. So we get the wonderful parents who say, I see you, I love you, I appreciate you, I approve of you, and you feel fully validated. You go out in the world in a completely different state than if you experienced ACEs or SEN and you go into the world saying, nobody wants me, I'm going to go out and eat worms, So very, very different experiences of validation, and then a different need, a desire, and the ability to recognize, as you're pointing out, what validation really is and let it in. No sound.
Thank you. I think a lot of us have experiences where we've had certain types of validation, but bottom line is I think what we're getting at is it's not wrong to want it. It's actually a very natural human need. And what we're exploring today is why, and then how to get it and how to receive it. So if we haven't been we haven't had the experience of getting it, how do we get it? Okay, because I think some people will try to get it in negative ways that are, it seems like we all desire it. Even the most difficult of us desire it, right? Validation.
Mm-hmm.
And some of us will go to all kinds of extents to get it. We'll pretzel ourselves. We'll try to be what other people want us to be. But where do we, how do we get validation in a productive, healthy, or useful way?
Well, having people in our lives that we value and admire and trust and respect allows us to start to believe what they say to us, right? But we still have to do the work. Whether you work with a professional or you do the work yourself, and you go back and you say, what was I validated for? Well, maybe I was validated as a child for being seen and not heard, or keeping my opinion to myself. On a negative spectrum, maybe the things I was validated for are negatively affecting my joy in life. Maybe I don't believe anybody wants to hear from me. So therefore, I don't speak up and I don't share things with the world because I was validated for being quiet. So we have, we're offering a really fine opportunity to have a look at yourself and say, what was I validated for when I was young? And how does it affect what I let in today? Because you've all seen people who have been told that they're bright and their ideas are worthwhile and they're loved and taken care of, and they're completely comfortable in their own skin. And then you have people who have had no validation or negative validation, and they're questioning all the time. They don't really believe you. You'll say something about their being wonderful or doing something fine, and they'll say, really? And they mean that. And it's from that early time. So validating one another in a friendship that matters is really important.
And there's people in between. There's people who have had some validation or some negative validation, and they've worked through it and then can receive more of it. I think for me, I went through a big transformation. I don't think I was one who received a lot of early childhood validation. I got some, but I was the biggest critic. I couldn't really receive it necessarily, but I had to practice on myself, validating myself first. Instead of, I learned a pattern of criticizing myself. I was really, really good at that. and so there was no room for validation in there. I think that there's a way to train oneself first to validate oneself. Then I noticed as I was doing that. And if I couldn't even do that, I'd start validating other people and then trying it on myself too. So I don't know that it's natural for a lot of people, even though we crave it. And then it seems like some people are so generous. They're gushing with this loving validation. And I remember thinking, I want to be like them because they look so happy. They look so fulfilled. And they give so freely of this energy, this loving energy that, wow, wouldn't that be awesome if I could get there? So I made that kind of a goal. And it just seems like validation is at the heart of this, along with this loving energy. Would you agree?
Oh, yes, it definitely can be. Now, of course, we've got the people that gush because they want you to like them. And then we have the people that have all of that love to give. So we have to be aware which one we're dealing with, you know. So
they're not the same is the point, right?
yes, yeah.
And how do does it matter if we're on the receiving end? It may, because do they want something for that? Do they feel needy in a sense when they're gushing? Or I don't know. What do we need to decipher out of that?
Well, usually they're looking for validation if they're a gusher. Somebody who's really centered will just look at you and say, I think that's great. That's really good. Why don't you do that? But somebody who is a gusher, like, oh, that's the best idea ever. You're absolutely fabulous. I want to be you, is not the same at all. So we have to have some discernment. And our discernment meter is off if we haven't been validated in our early life. So, it's really something to think about. But let's talk for a minute about how to validate another person. It has to be genuine. It can't be that I think I should say something nice. Because people have a really good detector for that. That ability to be in integrity and to be genuine and sincere in what you say. You think you should say something nice. But to validate someone is to be able to say what you want to say and tell them why without gushing. To be able to say, I think you do that well. They may not value your opinion, but if they do, and you say, I think you do that well, or I've always enjoyed your show, or I like the piece that you wrote, that is enough validation. It doesn't need 5 sentences.
I find that I gush when I'm really inspired by something. And the level of my validation or gushing is how inspired I am. It's pretty, and then there's also the element of if I'm seeing somebody is not really good at taking validation, or they're really not getting that I'm trying to validate them here, I find I have to reinforce it a little bit more than just a straight statement of facts like this is really good kind of thing. I find that I can add my energy to that, or want to, because it may help them receive it better, or I want them to receive it. I guess I'm trying to get them to receive it, and maybe that's my MO there, is like, well, gosh darn it, you should get this validation. You're not getting it.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly the thing that you have to learn to discern, And I take your point for sure. I mean, you hear something you've never heard before and you think it is so inspired. Well, yeah, of course you have emotion around that, But I'm talking about when you're sitting down with a friend and they run an idea by you and you genuinely say, I really like that. I think that'll work. And that I think that you are really on the right track. You're validating the other person's point of view and their ability to think and their ability to have a creative idea. And they feel validated for that. But the other side of validation is that you validate people for who they are. Like, I really like being around you. You and I hang out a lot. And it's great. We don't have to do anything, just be together, and we enjoy our conversations. We could probably be in the same room for 2 hours and not speak, and we'd enjoy that as well, because we have that companionable silence and we value each other's opinion. So that's the kind of relationship where validation occurs just by the fact that we continue to hang out, and if we need something, we ask for it. But it's tricky. So I think for the purposes of our very short conversation here, we should talk about, what validation does to us. That when somebody validates you and you can let it in, you grow. You believe it yourself because it's a mirror. We put ourselves out there and the mirror comes back and says, yes, that's great. But if we don't put ourselves out there, then we can make people wrong for not coming in and being interested in us. We get into a very dysfunctional system. And then we're making the whole world wrong. Nobody cares about me. Well, you have to do your part. You have to speak up. You have to be available to be validated. So there's all kinds of pieces to this puzzle.
Oh my gosh, this is such a rich topic. I love it. And by the way, if anybody's listening and you want to chime in on with your questions or concerns or ideas, or just let us know, validate us that we are, we're supporting your efforts. That we welcome your comments at Transform Your Relationships, the Facebook page. So
Transform Your Relationships Live.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of both, because we have the title Transform Your Relationships, and then we have the URL Transform Your Relationships Live. So that's the URL we're at, facebook.com/Transform Your Relationships Live. The Transform Your Relationships show. So validation is so key. We're hearing that, when we're centered, it's kind of natural to do. But I know that some people don't naturally think to validate others. They're just it's just not in their realm. And if one wants to get validated by that other person, or wants to know, hey, check in with you, how does one ask for it? How does one make oneself available? Because, otherwise we do wind up blaming the world. And I wanted to make one point. That is a really good red flag for yourself, that if you find out, if you're like, why me? Why is nobody ever validating me? That's when it's a clue that we're not making ourselves available for it. But what can we do to make ourselves available?
Well, I was giggling there for a minute because I was thinking about this story about this couple who were married for 40 years, and the woman said to the man, "Do you love me? You never say that. Do you love me?" And he looked at her and he said, "I told you once, and I'll tell you if it changes." Right? So
that's scary. That's very scary to me, hearing that. Like, oh, but I don't have the constant knowing of it's going to change,
Well, if we look at the Myers-Briggs personality things, we'll look at a J, a strong, strong J, and that's what they'll say. I told you I loved you. I'll let you know if it ever changes. Or I go to this restaurant and I eat this particular thing, and each time you ask me which restaurant I want to go to, I'm going to tell you that one, and I'm going to order the same thing. It's just the way they process the world. So people validate people differently. And so when you are not being validated by someone that you'd like to be validated by, don't feel needy by saying, I would like to know if you think I do this well, or I would like to know why you like to hang out with me, right? If you have a conversational ability, then you can ask that question. And it's not needy. You could be with somebody who doesn't validate other people because they think that by smiling at them and spending time with them, that's all that's required. And then there are other people, like I just had this experience Sunday morning, I later in the day opened my email and I found that a person had asked a question about a free consult with me, which are readily available, at 5:28 in the morning. At 6:28, this person, I don't know if they're male or female, wrote a note, because their name is Bubba, so I don't know, wrote a note 1 hour later and said, "Why the hell don't you answer your emails?" And we're talking 6:30 in the morning on a Sunday. At 7 o'clock, they sent a nasty email about my not caring about them, and and then today, I got an email from them and said, "You snubbed me completely, and now you want me to buy a book," because they had put in a form, and then it gives them the opportunity to know about the book. And, there are people like that. And when I wrote to this person and I said, you wrote to me at 5:20 in the morning on a Sunday. We don't do business on Sunday. You haven't been snubbed or discounted or dismissed in any way. It was just the timing. And you seem to have answered your own question that you no longer want my services, and I wish you well. So, of course, I got a note back that said, you biatch, blah, 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 blah. Now, that's not validating, right? Nor would I look for validation from a person who obviously has a problem. Nor would I ask for validation from a person. And I'm an admin on a large group on Facebook, and I'm always telling people in there, because they've been in troubled relationships, why are you seeing yourself reflected by the difficult person and believing them? Why don't you look in the mirror and believe what you see? So you have to ask the people that you really care about their opinion, not the toxic people for whom you're looking for their approval, because they are going to withhold validation.
On purpose, because
I'm not giving my power away. I want you to feel needy. I want you to need to come to me, and I will withhold it repeatedly.
Because the more you withhold it, the more the needy person wants it, and it keeps them in power. So the minute, if those of us who need validation stop looking for it with toxic people and go and ask it from people who are centered, we just took our power back and stopped giving it to someone who's not treating us well.
Exactly. And it's kind of crazy making to do that. Yeah, yay, Laura. It's crazy making to want the approval of someone you don't like or who treats you badly. Let's just step back and think about it for a moment. Why would you want the approval of someone who treats you badly? They're invested in treating you badly. Don't go looking for their approval or their validation. It wouldn't be worth anything if they gave it, because they'd only want something. That would be the reason that they gave it. And you don't value their opinion anyway because you don't like them. So watch where you look for validation.
Seems like if we're looking for validation with someone who's toxic, it's because we want to feel like we have the power to change somebody's opinion or conquer something, or, there's this, or keep us stuck.
Complex.
Yeah, or keep us stuck, like it's another, because we're not going to necessarily get it, and we subconsciously know it. It's just a way to prove ourselves. See, I'm not worthy, and then it's the whole world blame thing. I have my proof. I have my evidence. Mm-hmm. Where are you getting your evidence from?
Well, my mom was a hijackal. So her whole power was in not ever approving of me. Now, I could have spit wooden nickels and stood on my head for a year and she wouldn't have done anything, right? Because that's the way she managed. Now, if you had a parent like that, you were unvalidated. And, I've always felt so blessed that I had talent because I played the piano and sang, and that I could do well in school because I got a lot of outside validation for what I could do. not for who I was, but at least I got some, right? Imagine people who couldn't do that, how worn down they could be, how distressed and depressed and oppressed and repressed they could be, because they're still those very people who invited them into the world don't want them or will not validate them.
I feel like I have a song going through my head, looking for love in all the wrong places.
Exactly.
Looking for validation in all the wrong places. And where would you suggest someone start? If they've had a pattern of trying to get validation from someone or never getting validation for who they are, only for what they do. What would we do? Where should we start?
Well, first of all, let's talk about it if you happen to be in a romantic relationship with one of these people. This would be a good place to look. If you keep hoping that that other person is going to like you and validate you and treat you well, remember, everything is in the behavior, not the words. Words can be said so easily, but if they don't align with the behavior, believe the behavior. So if you're with a person who withholds from you, they withhold themselves, they withhold conversation, they withhold validation, they withhold approval of any kind, then look at that first and say, where have I placed myself? What's going on here? Maybe that person doesn't have it to give, or maybe they have it to give and they won't give it. And if I'm in that kind of relationship, I may be in a place that really needs some help. Many times couples come to me and they're in that place. Well, you don't validate me, so I won't validate you. And now we've got this, And the evidence from the Gottman Institute, that wonderful place in Seattle, is they do so much research that couples have a problem for 6 years before they get help. Don't have that be you. If you recognize today that you and your partner are incapable or unwilling of validating each other, then you need some help. But the second part of your question is, what do we do to start finding validation in our lives for who we are? Well, first of all, look to see whom you've attracted into your life. Okay, who are the people that I surround myself with? Are these people who have validation to give? Are these people that I would appreciate the validation from? And would I be able to hear it if it came my way anyway? Where is my receptor for validation at this point in our life?
And then we go for, so if we're not surrounded by people who are capable of giving it, that's one thing. If we are able to receive it, or we're not able to receive it, there's probably different things to do next.
Yeah. There are things to do next. First of all, do your own work. I think we made that clear, right? Find out what happened to me. Was I validated when I was growing up? What was going on? Was I the golden child? Was I the scapegoat in the family? Were other siblings favored over me? What was going on? Find that out. And do your inner work. Find out where you got those messages about who you are and whether or not you were validated or not, or whether or not it was withheld from you. And then start to say, who am I surrounding myself with, as I just said? And then say, whose opinion do I value? And I am close enough to find out. And who is already validating me and who is not? And then ask yourself, do they validate me in other ways that I don't recognize because I've not really taken that in? Have they told me 10 times how much they like to hang out with me, or I'm the first person they call when they get an idea for going somewhere or doing something? I need to get my receptors in order and realize that's validation. Right?
Yeah, I think it's perfectly okay. I'm going to highlight one thing. I'm going to validate one thing you said, and many things you said actually, but which is, and I had a personal experience, there are people in your life who are toxic or who may be toxic, and once you become aware of that, there's a decision to make. How much time are you actually going to spend with them if you have a choice? And most of the time we have a choice in one way or another. And we always have a choice of whether we seek validation from them or not. And the third thing is, can you create and bring in other people and look to start to open yourself up to people who are actually not toxic, fun to be around, people who enjoy your company, people whose company you enjoy without any of the toxic elements involved. I remember having to kind of reevaluate and start to choose new friends, and also put other friends on what I call the 10-minute rule. It's like, okay, I hear all the complaining, I hear the berating, I hear the whatever. I gotta go. The water's boiling. I gotta go. It's like, I'll talk to you later. Bye. So graciously, I started shifting where I put my time and who I spent it with. And then I actually remember to myself, if I want to stay in a good neighborhood up here, sometimes I need outside input. I can do a lot of my own work, but outside input is really good reinforcement. So I started asking for people to be my cheerleaders. And I would say, can I call you up and say, I need some cheerleading, and can you just tell me 2 or 3 good things that you know about me, or like about me, or I just need a little cheerleading right now. And they would be like, sure. So we had this agreement in advance, and even just having that agreement was validating.
Exactly.
I could just think about that. Like, oh, I could call Charmaine up and she would be, or Charlotte, and she would be there. If I didn't even have to call her, because I thought I just knew what she would say. I'd start saying it to myself. So there's this combination of self-validation and external validation that we really can start setting up once we do our work. I love that point.
Yeah, so begin with the self-reflection, and then look around, and then see what you can do, because Laura just gave you a great idea. You can ask someone to be a cheerleader without being needy. And if you are needy, notice that. Like, if you all of a sudden realize, like, here I am, this poor lost lamb, looking for everybody to do something for me, I got an idea for you. Go validate somebody.
And I was just thinking, yeah, go validate them. How about that? Try it out. See if it works. See how you like it. I love that. Go ahead and go validate. And I was also thinking about, well, surrounding yourself with cheerleaders is a great idea, but make sure they're cheerleaders not because they want something from you, but because they genuinely are in relationship with you for who you are, not because they think they can get something from you, because that's going back into the toxic realm. Just have to put that caveat back in there.
Yeah, and it's really important. Normal, healthy, emotionally healthy people come in all kinds of personality styles. So there may be some J's who told you once and they never need to tell you again. And there may be some P's who are always saying, how do you like me so far? How do you like me so far? So we have different styles. So none of them are good or bad or right or wrong. They're just different. So when you are able to do your own work, look in the mirror and say, kind of like what's going on here. I like myself. I approve of myself, and this is good, but better try that out in the world. And then you reflect and say, where does that reflected back to me? And then you learn to believe it, because we're really good at dismissing the positive. Have you ever, that's a topic for another day, but we'll dismiss the positive in favor of the negative. Somebody does something and you don't think the positive about it. You think the negative most frequently if you're human. We're always looking for the downside potentials so frequently. So learn that about yourself, and then give yourself permission to ask somebody that you value, who doesn't need anything from you, and that you're already in relationship with. Caveat there, because sometimes people go to people that they're not in relationship with, and the person's like, well, I hardly know you, and then ask for the validation. not from a needy place, but I just need to try this out on you. Do you think that's a good idea? Or do you think that I should go ahead with that? Or do you think I do that well? And it's not needy. You're not being the warm puppy who comes around, do you like me? Do you like me? Do you like me? No, it's people that you value. And so you get some feedback from places that you value, which is important because you chose them. It's not just anybody. You see, that's the difference. You chose who to go to for validation.
This makes me think of the book I read by Shad Helmstead, or What to Say When You Talk to Yourself.
Yeah.
And it takes practice to start looking for the positive and then to start asking for it in a way and not feel so needy when we do need it. We need it, but we don't have to be needy about it if we're setting ourselves up to have the resources, the people, the feedback in our life from those people who will give us, validation on, yes, this is good. So there is a structure one can put in place, and it starts with looking at ourselves and looking at the people in our lives and where can we get that positive, healthy feedback from. Wow, we can go on and on about this, I think, Rhoberta.
Yeah, like most topics, we can go on and on about it. But, I think we've given a really good introduction to the idea of validation, and we'll get you thinking about that, I hope, because it's really important. It's not something to be taken lightly. It is really important, visceral to who you are in the world.
So definitely think about it. Feel free to comment here on our show. Also, we will not abandon you. We will validate you. So if you want some validation, to visit our websites. We're happy to give you some help. And forrelationshiphelp.com is where you can find all kinds of validation from Dr. Rhoberta Shaler, and my site is transformtoday.com. And as a hypnotherapist, I just know that programming ourselves does work. We were programmed one way as young people, and it oftentimes has stuck around because we are so suggestible, especially when we're young, but we can change it. And that's why I love Shad's book. That's why I love the work we do here for you. And please come back in 2 weeks. We'll have another engaging topic, and we're here for you.
We certainly are. And I remember interviewing Shad for a radio show that I had years ago. And that book is as pertinent today as it was 20 years ago. So make sure that you remember what to say when you talk to yourself. And we will be back, and we'll be here for you with another topic to keep you thinking in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.
Bye for now, everyone.